anybody else wants to introduce themselves, I guess I'm just going to launch into my new market manager spiel, whether there's new market manager people here or not. And we always appreciate whoever shows up for these sessions because there's always more to learn about markets. But one of the things that I think is important, and it isn't so applicable to this group because everybody's already with established markets, is why you're starting a farmer's market. And if any of you out there are either first or second year, you might think about why your market got started and whether it is still it's still being guided by that particular intent, whatever it might be. Some people start markets because they want to eat good food. Some people start markets because they're vendors and they want a farmer's market in their community. Some people start markets because they figure it's a great way to meet farmers and get farmers to be able to sell things in their local community and create community and so on and so forth. But it's always interesting to just kind of think about, wow, why did this market get started? And is it still more or less fulfilling that particular purpose? The next thing that I can talk about in terms of markets is what the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association can do for you as a market manager, and what we can do for your market just sort of in general. And as you know, we have membership fees. The membership fee is based on how many vendors you have at your market. But in exchange for becoming members, we offer marketing resources. We offer programs for low-income customers like Double Up Food Box and the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program. We offer promotional funds, and we offer a lot of one-on-one advice or troubleshooting for any market manager who wants to call us at any particular point and say, hey, this is what's going on with my market, and how can you help me with some of these issues? We really attempt to be, as much as possible, a service organization. And as you know, without farmers markets and farmers in the state, we wouldn't have an organization at all. So you guys are vitally important. There's a number of different ways that you can contact us, either by email or by phone. And we also have this incredible resource in our website. And I'm assuming that a number of you guys have already checked out our website, but whenever I check out our website, and I'm not somebody who spends a lot of time checking out websites, I'm always pretty exhausted just at the amount of information that's available on the website in terms of how to start a market, what some of the steps that you need to go through, how you can involve your community, how you can reach out for new vendors. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's not exhausting. You need to take little chunks of it at a time, but I'd say it's pretty close to exhaustive in terms of all of the things that you can find out about your farmer's market. And of course, everything's changing all of the time, and we do try to keep our information as up to date as possible. The other thing that's true about farmers markets, wherever you are, is they're all unique. And that's one of the things that for us makes markets so much fun, is different markets with different managers and different vendors have whole different flavors. But as the market manager, you are a major contributor to the overall tone of your market. And it's interesting. Over many years, I've been to many markets, and it's almost like you can walk into a market and pick up the tone in the first 5 minutes of being there, maybe less. And then you find the market manager and start talking to the market manager and go, oh yeah, this market definitely reflects the market manager. And so that's just something to keep in mind when you are managing the market, just what you're able to provide in terms of ambience to the market, enthusiasm, energy, and so on and so forth. And we should remind you, but many of you already know this, that that running a market, managing a market, being the sort of lead person in any market is a huge undertaking. And it requires a lot of energy, it requires a lot of focus, and it requires a lot of people skills that a lot of managers learn as they go along. And then some managers start the market because they love people, but it's definitely a challenge as far as that goes, because you're dealing with vendors, and that's one kind of relationship, and you're dealing with the public, and that's another kind of relationship. And then sometimes you're dealing with your municipality, and that's yet a third relationship. And then you're dealing with the NMFMA, of course, which is delightful. So, membership, we have the membership dues, and then the benefits that come from membership is trainings, marketing resources, programs for low-income customers, promotional funds, and person-to-person advice anytime you feel like you need it. One of the other things that we provide as a service to markets around the state is general liability insurance. And you can find out more about this, as you can find out more about everything on our website under Market Manager Resources and General Liability. And if your market is in a public venue, some sort of park or parking lot or whatever it is, then chances are whoever owns that lot, or if it's in the if it's owned by a municipality, somewhere along the line somebody's going to say, hey, where's the insurance? And if you're just starting a market, or if you have a market in process and you haven't heard that before, you might just panic. It's like, what do you mean insurance? And what it is, of course, is liability insurance, because everybody wants someone else to be liable for any sort of accident or something that happens on their property, especially if it's not their event. And so we have a relatively low-cost liability insurance available to you. And you can find out more about that in our Member Leap website, which is the NewMexicoFMA.org. Most municipalities and most private lot owners accept the insurance as enough to satisfy their requirements. The one thing about the insurance is it is not a, hey, somebody's walking around your market and they trip and break their glasses and they want, whatever it's going to cost, $200 to $500 to replace their glasses. That is not the kind of insurance this is. This is the kind of insurance that if someone slips and falls and breaks their back and needs, 12 to 24 months of rehabilitation, and it's going to cost somewhere in the $500,000 range, that's where this insurance will kick in. But just so you know, anytime any kind of event like that happens, everybody who could possibly be liable all gets together, and their insurance companies all do a lot of questions and answers, and the person who gets sued is the person who is proven to be negligent. And that's just a whole nother area that we could spend hours talking about. But just keep in mind, this policy is for big, bad stuff happening. It is not for small and incidental little accidents at the market. It does not cover your vendors. If, for example, your vendor's Easy Up flies into somebody's car and breaks the windshield. Liability issues are big and relatively fraught and terribly complicated, but the insurance that we provide for not that much money will will allow you to open up your market. And over the many years that I've been involved with the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association, I think we had one, maybe we've had two claims. So people who shop at farmers markets and the farmers themselves are not particularly litigious types of people. And we do provide the coverage that you'll need to get your market open. Does anybody have any questions specifically about liability insurance? Because that tends to be one that is confusing and complicated to people. It's also one of my least favorite topics, but the whole insurance issue was one of the things that got the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association started. So even though I don't like insurance very much, I am grateful that it's something that we've been able to help markets with for a long time. Doesn't seem like I have any questions on that. So on to the next thing, which is the promotional funds that we provide to markets. And one of the things that we always emphasize about farmers markets is farmers markets are community events. Farmers markets is one of the only ways now, even though COVID has sort of made an exception of this, it's really one of the only ways that communities gather with a common purpose of feeding themselves. And markets like this are about as old as humanity. It's something that people have done for as long as anybody can remember. And so there's something really grounding and reminiscent about farmers markets that a lot of people really resonate with. It is a community event. And one of your jobs as a market manager is to constantly try to embed your market in your community as much as possible. Whether that means that you periodically call your local radio station and say, hey, do you want to come down and do a live broadcast? Or you call your local weekly newspaper and say, wow, would you like to come down and take some pictures? And what do we need to do to get a story? Whatever it is, you want as many people in your community to be aware of farmers markets as possible. One of the sort of small things that the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association does to help with that is we provide promotional funds for your market every season. And the way we figure it out is every market gets a base rate of $300. And then on top of that base, they get $5 per vendor. So if you do the math, that means, say you've got a market with 10 vendors, your base rate is $300 plus $5 times your 10 vendors means that we will provide you with $350 worth of promotional funds for your market on an annual basis. And how you spend that $350 is really pretty much entirely up to you, and we really urge you to be as creative as possible. That means that you can spend the money creating signage for your market. You can spend the money paying someone to run around to local businesses and ask if they want to sponsor the market in some way. You can spend the money to buy radio advertisements or newspaper advertisements. And because you're with the farmers market and everybody likes farmers markets, when you go to get radio ads, a lot of times you can say, hey, we can pay for some of these. Would you guys kick some in for free? And many, many times the radio station will say, sure, because they like the market. It's also a way, just because you're dealing with someone, hopefully in your local community, it's another person that you're coming into contact with that you can talk about the market with. So maybe you go to your local newspaper and for whatever reason, the person that you're dealing with doesn't know anything about the market. Well, you have a little platform to tell them all about the market and all about ways that you and their newspaper or radio station or whatever could work together in a way that's going to help build the community and support both of your organizations. So the promotional funds on the one hand are not a huge amount of money, but we like to see them as a catalyst to building community in your market area. There is a very good explanation of what we need on the website when it comes to getting your promotional dollars, because they are on a reimbursement basis. They are not on a, hey, we'll send us the money and we'll figure out what to do with it. So pretty much what you do is you guys spend the money, then you send in what you've bought. You send in a picture of what you've bought. You send in proof that you actually bought it. Once we have those three things, then we write you a check. And if you put it on your personal credit card or something like that, because you don't have the cash flow to just pay for it outright, we can get that whole process taken care of before your credit card bill comes due. Last year, because of COVID, we did not have a lot of people participating in our promotional fund program. And I think there's all kinds of reasons for that. I think in a lot of cases, market managers were too distracted with just getting their markets going to even sort of register that this promotional fund thing was going on. But it is going on. And literally from the time your market opens, or even before in some cases, if you want to get signage, you can get the signage, pay for the signage, send us the information about what you got and what it looks like and how you paid for it, and we'll get your money back to you. You can do that before the market starts. Just so you've got signage once it does start. There is a deadline on when you have to have sent your promotional dollar expenses in, which is November. But as the person who writes the checks for the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association, I always urge people to please do it as soon as they spend the money and to not forget to spend the money. I think a lot of times people say, oh yeah, well, I'm going to do that as the season goes on. And then the season goes on and they get all caught up in running their market because it's a big deal. And then it gets to be mid to late September and they suddenly go, oh, I haven't spent those promotional funds. Promotional funds spent at the beginning of the market or, going into the fat part of the market, which is, early August, is better than advertising your market in September. I'm sure you understand. And again, if you're at a loss at all about how you want to spend the promotional dollars, you're always welcome to give us a call or send us an email and we will talk to you about that. The other thing that we do, and it also isn't particularly appropriate to the group that we've got here because many of you are already in well-established markets, is we have what's called the second-year market funds. And the second-year market funds is for a market that has managed to survive their first year. And the first year of running a market can be a little bit daunting. But if you actually get through and decide, yes, we want to have a market in the second year, we figure, okay, these people are really committed and actually are going to get their market going for a second year. We have a promotional fund called the Second-Year Market Fund of up to $500 to help you with the infrastructure of your market. And there are a few requirements on that, but if you're in that place where you're having a second-year market, I'm happy to talk to you and provide more information about the second-year market funds. Now, given that I've kind of basically gone over what we provide as an organization to you as members, I'm looking for questions once again. Yes.
Sarah, there is a question in the chat.
I see the question in the chat about could the promotional funds go towards creation of a website for the specific farmers market? And the answer for that would be, of course. A lot of markets have websites. I would say more markets do Facebook pages. But yeah, if whatever you want us to pay for is a method for promoting your market, we will pay for it. Now, when it comes to creating a website, what we would need is, some sort of invoice that indicates how you got your website going. Maybe we pay for your annual domain fees. It can be whatever it is, as long as we can see an invoice, we can see a website address, and we can see that you've paid for it, and we can actually visit the website itself. All of that is going to qualify promotional funds. One of the things that markets have also used for promotional funds is Facebook boosts. And I assume that anybody who does Facebook kind of knows what a Facebook boost is. I don't like the way Facebook invoices very much, but when it comes to promotional funds, we definitely can reimburse you for that.
Hey, Sarah, can I ask a question? I can't quite remember the details, but don't we also require that for promotional funds that there has to be some connection to there being a mention of healthy, that it has to be like has to be something for healthy, fresh food, or I can't remember what the other requirement is, but that helps us meet our requirements as a 501c3 that this is for educational purposes.
Yes, and those details are provided on the website. If you can also prove that your market is in a food desert, or what do we call it, or at-risk health area, that also is sufficient for getting promotional funds. But yeah, anything that you can use in your advertising that indicates that not only is the market the greatest place to be on whatever day your market is occurring, but that also you're promoting health in your community and healthy eating, that is something that works for us as well. And Christina just put the link for more information about promotional funds in the chat. Denise just reminded us again that we want to make sure that everybody who's here please remembers to vote for their for the board of directors. That time is running out, so please participate in that. And are there any other market related questions? It doesn't even have to be about a new market that people would like to take up here. Otherwise, I am more or less through with what I have to present with. If you guys don't come up with questions, then I'm going to start randomly calling on you and saying, hey, tell us a little bit about your market. That's a prompt for, like, you might want to think up some questions so that you don't necessarily have to deal with being randomly called on. Although, all of you guys are interested in markets and participate in them, and you've got an audience full of people who feel the same way. So it's a great opportunity to bring up any type of issue related to markets that you'd like to talk about. Okay, not a very chatty bunch, you guys. Let's see, who can I call on? Bonnie, it's my understanding that that you guys are going to have sort of an association of farmers markets over in the northwest corner of the state. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. My name is Bonnie Hopkins. I help with the Farmington Growers Market up here in San Juan County. And we wrote a USDA grant with San Juan College. They are the grant awardee to create the Northwest New Mexico Growers Market Alliance, because we really felt like I mean, first of all, we all really get along and try to support each other at all of the various markets across the county. And, you know, most of the vendors that come to the Aztec market also come to Farmington. And then a bunch of the farmers that go to Shiprock also come to Farmington. So we all just kind of share vendors and share information. And we noticed that we were really duplicating a lot of the effort. Like we're all doing the same thing separately. And we have a lot of problems. I mean, how candid are we getting here? But I mean, really, I guess this is the same problem like across the state where there's like one person that really like keeps the market going, and then like all of the responsibility is on you as a person, and like you can't walk away even if you wanted to because you have all of the knowledge. And so we really wanted to build sustainability into the markets and do things like we found a fiscal agent, which I think has been the best thing that any of us have ever done. And I cannot recommend this enough. Our local Four Corners Economic Development organization has signed on to be our fiscal sponsor. So they have a 501c3 designation, and they are willing to pay accounting services for our markets, which is like a huge benefit that they're just graciously offering for us. But what we're doing is pooling our market funds. So like I will put money from the Farmington market into the account, and then our physical market managers actually invoice the foundation for their hours, because what we found is that it's really hard to pay yourself as a market manager when you're collecting the money, and then to be like, I'm going to write this check out to myself, feels really gross. And so in turn, Pauline's not in here, so I can't call her out, but like Pauline has been running the Aztec market for like 10 years, and she's never paid herself because it feels so wrong to keep that money. And so I created invoices for all of them and submitted them to the associate or to the foundation so that we can actually pay the market managers, because that's really one of the biggest challenges. If your name is on the bank account, if you are the type of person that's running a farmer's market, you are not the kind of person that's going to pay yourself for that. So that has been the biggest shift for us, is really making sure that all of the market managers maybe aren't getting compensated for all of their time, but because of like we got a generous grant from you guys for COVID PPE and stuff like that, and then we got a few other things. We partnered with the county to do some census promotion. They gave us $6,000 to do a census promotion. Why? Because we had a foundation that could take the check. We had a nonprofit that could take the check. So like that was a huge game changer. So we were able to pay each of the market managers $1,000. And so even if it's not everything, it's something. And I think that really, we're hoping will help with manager burnout, and really making sure that they feel appreciated. So we've got a lot of other components in the works with the organization. We're shifting to the Manage My Market platform and doing online applications. And then Pauline Powell is shifting from Aztec. We're trying. I don't know what she'll end up doing. She'll probably still manage Aztec, but she is our regional coordinator for the Alliance. And she works for San Juan College 20 hours a week for the next 3 years, helping us build in sustainability so that we can make the markets transferable, which to me means no bank account in your personal name. We tried really hard to get away from the social security number on the SNAP machine. It's not possible. It's not possible. It's not possible. We tried like 65 different avenues. Somebody's got to put their social security number down for that. So that's been another thing. And then also helping all of the markets write bylaws. So those are the first 3 things that we're doing, so that if there needs to be a shift, that all of the weight isn't falling on one person. I'm happy to answer any specific questions, but that's what we're trying to do up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all of the things that Bonnie just said are absolutely critical. And anybody who's been running a market, even for 2 months, is going to begin to see where the weak spots are. And sometimes the weak spots are right up to who the market manager is and how much responsibility they're taking on, and who they're necessarily accountable to in the short run or the long run, and who they can fall back on in the long run or short run if suddenly a weekend comes up or their market day comes up and they're not able to be there. That is a huge sort of hole in the whole apparatus. But once again, the NMFMA does its very best to try to provide resources to markets that makes it less likely that that's going to happen rather than more likely. We do have on our website sample bylaws. Bylaws are one of those things that people who start markets, especially because they're outgoing and they love markets, don't necessarily like to pour over bylaws and then get everybody to agree with them. It's a slightly dry task. There's usually somebody who's sort of fascinated about it, but sometimes those people are not the greatest communicators to the rest of the group, which is why we also really recommend that as market managers, you have a group behind you, whether it's an advisory council, whether it's a board of directors, whatever it might be, so that you've got people that you can talk to, that can help you with problem solving, and who ultimately feel as responsible as you do for the market itself. That is critical, and that prevents market manager burnout, as Bonnie was saying. It also prevents market manager turnover. And given the amount of time that I've been at the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association, I would say one of the biggest, baddest issues that we deal with is market manager turnover. And when a market manager comes along and stays for a year, we're like, hallelujah. And then if they stay for 2, then we're really thrilled, because it is a pretty steep learning curve the first year to be running a market. And we've sort of noticed that if they stay for 3, we might have them for a good long time. And we've been really lucky at the NMFMA to have market managers who come and stay and stay and stay. And Pauline Pau over in Aztec should probably be knighted. She, or whatever we call it when it's a market manager, knighted isn't exactly the term. In any event, she has been really, really important in terms of keeping that market going. And I think about 3 or 4 years ago, she started saying, I think I'd really like to ease out of this job. And she has not been successful in finding a replacement. And her volunteers who said, yeah, we love volunteering and we'll keep volunteering, she said to several of them, well, how'd you like to manage the market yourself? And most of them said, oh, we come and work because we love you. So those kind of market managers are really doing a big job in keeping their community market going and keeping their volunteers, vendors, and customers happy. And we are, as I said, incredibly grateful for those kinds of people. And they're out there.
One of Pauline's volunteers is actually with us. Maybe Pip is, we're going to convince Pip to take over the Aztec market. I don't know. But it might be interesting to hear from a volunteer perspective, Pip, just kind of like why you stay as a volunteer. Because that's another component of something we're really trying to work on. And something we wrote into the grant is we're using Volunteer Match, which is like a dating service for volunteers. I didn't know such a thing existed, to try to get quality volunteers. And so Pauline has seemed to, I don't know, create this like unicorn situation where she has this incredible volunteer base. And so that's a huge thing. But I don't know, Pip, if you want to talk about that, because Pip's been volunteering at the Aztec market for only 1 year. No, I just see Pip a lot because she's in the community and she's at all of the markets. But that might be interesting to hear too, because I wish that that's something that we had started in Farmington a long time ago, of like, how do you keep volunteers? Like, how do you even do that?
Yes, and Pip, we would love to hear from you if you want to share.
Can you hear me okay?
Pretty well. You could turn your volume up a little bit or get a little closer to your mic.
Okay, well, I have these earbuds in and sometimes they're great and sometimes they're not.
Okay.
So I was temporarily unemployed for a while last year, and it happened to coincide with the beginning of the farmers market. So I just went over there and said, "Hey, Pauline, do you need any volunteers?" So there was no volunteer match at all. But I'm originally from England, and markets are just, they're not anything special. They're just part of the fabric. And so I grew up with markets just as being a normal way of doing business. And you got to go and, and they're kind of almost permanent. Some of them are permanent outside markets, some of them are indoor markets. So I grew up in a culture of markets. And I've always just felt that this is so important and local food is important. And I totally believe in sustainability. So being part of the farmers market volunteer group is just sort of something totally natural to me. And at the time I had time. And when I did get employed again, I'm only working part-time. And this is part of I consider it part of my job, that on Wednesday afternoons, I'm at the market, and that's just, I'm not available for anything else at that point, because I do believe it is so important. And the field, I'm now working in home visiting services and up here in Northwest New Mexico. And I just feel like everything the farmers market stands for totally dovetails in with what I'm doing in my professional life. And I know, because I work for Northwest New Mexico Firstborn, and we have offices in Gallup, Zuni, and Farmington. And the significant need for fresh produce and for education. And I feel like these all go together. And anyway, that's kind of my story of how I wound up there. I do have other full-time, part-time jobs, so I'm not looking to be a manager, but I feel like it's really important. I agree that we need good volunteers who show up, if not 100% of the time, who show up on a very regular basis or communicate whether or not, okay, so I'm going to be there. I will be there. I will let you know if I'm not going to be there. And I think that is super key. And, Pauline is such a great person to work with. And Casey, who is also here, because I saw her put an applause in there. Casey is also great. So I feel like we have a really good crew of people, even if it's a very small crew of people. It's a small market, and last year it was definitely real small. But I love that we're doing this whole collaboration within San Juan County, because we're a really large county and we have several markets here. And I think, like Bonnie was saying, getting this whole collaboration for the Northwest New Mexico growers is really important too.
Thank you very much for sharing, and I agree. Anywhere that people can collaborate and avoid duplicity of effort is going to go a long way towards serving your local market communities, because there are a lot of very repetitive tasks. And so if those can be consolidated, it's absolutely great. Alaska, do you want to talk just a little bit about how you've gotten volunteers at your market?
Well, hello. I'm sorry, I'm driving, so it's a little bit loud, but I'm having my hands thing here. Well, the Rail Yards kind of just reached out organically to volunteers through social media before the pandemic. But during the pandemic, we decided, at least last year anyway, that we weren't going to have any volunteers, just to keep everybody safe, and only have staff that really took some in-depth safety training, because we didn't feel like it was fair to expect volunteers to go through all the NM Safe certified training and everything like that. But we kind of just reached out organically through social media. Our volunteer coordinator also uses a couple tools. I'll try to think of, so they're like, oh, it's called Sign Up Genius. So she uses Sign Up Genius, which is kind of like a form where you put up little shifts and volunteers can sign up for little shifts. And we tend to overschedule for volunteers, just kind of that way if people don't show up, we have a backup and a backup and a backup, but it's very challenging to, I think, have the right jobs for the right people, and a lot of flexibility and understanding with scheduling volunteers. We kind of move towards a model where we have staff doing the tasks that have like fiscal liability, so the token reimbursements and things for vendors and the EBT machine, we do have staff doing that, just because we felt like there was so much volatility, I guess, if you had volunteers kind of doing that, if someone didn't show up, or we just decided to have staff for those things, but for vendor check-in and managing things like that, we do have volunteers.
Yeah, I think it's really important with volunteers that they feel like what they're doing is worthwhile and they understand what they're doing. But I think it's also true that volunteers are like, hey, I'm a volunteer, something came up, I didn't show up. That the other thing that's really important to impress volunteers with, of course, is, hey, if you volunteer, we're kind of depending on you here, so please stay in contact. And I do believe that social media and texting and all of that kind of stuff really serves the organizations in terms of their volunteers, because someone can say an hour and a half before they're showing up, ooh, I really can't because my dog needs to go to the vet or whatever it is. And that's one of the resources that I think markets are really taking advantage of. As somebody who's been involved with markets for a good long time, when I got started, there was none of that. But I think that is something that that's really serving markets pretty well. The other thing that we can talk to anybody here about, or we can certainly hook you up with somebody who can talk to you about, is the platform such as Manage My Market, which is an online platform that vendors use and market managers use to kind of expedite the whole application process. That's a resource that's out there. And then the other thing that we just kind of touched on, but it's another area that we can provide really quite a few resources, is in how you want your market to be structured. Whether you want to have an advisory board, whether you want to become incorporated with the state of New Mexico, whether you want to be what's called an unincorporated association, any number of things. We've talked to a lot of different people around the state about how they want their market set up, and that's a really important part of market managing that it's good to think about, and we can support you in thinking about that. Do we have any other questions here?
Sarah, I just wanted to give another point to that topic. This is Alaska from the Rail Yards. I do recommend incorporating or forming an official organization or business as soon as possible. Rail Yards Market be the fiscal sponsor for many years, which was great, and we still have a great relationship with our fiscal sponsor, but it was hard after being sort of like established under a fiscal sponsor as an unofficial entity and then incorporating way later. I just recommend to get incorporated and get your structure, get your bylaws and that foundation as soon as possible. Don't just go off and like some of the other markets were saying, doing kind of weird things under your own personal name mixed with another business or something like that. Just set your foundation and structure right away. It'll save you a whole lot of headache later.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, especially if you're in an urban area such as the rail yard markets, because you do have a lot of a lot of red tape to deal with in terms of the city and in terms of the number of vendors that you've got. I think for a smaller market, that's a pretty high bar, because there, you know, a lot of times it may just be one or two people that are providing all the momentum for the market. And you know, I think bylaws are important, and we do have sample bylaws on our website. But in terms of becoming their own 501c3, that's a particularly tall order. But you can very easily incorporate as a nonprofit in the state of New Mexico. It costs something like $10, although maybe it's gone up to $25. There is a certain administrative burden that goes with that, but it does establish you as an entity. And when you go to open a bank account and they say, we need to see your corporate papers, you can say, well, here they are, because you've got your incorporation papers. In a lot of cases, maybe you've got some sample bylaws, and in order to open a business account now in most areas of the state, you have to have that. Otherwise, you have to put the bank account in your own name, which can be fraught, because say you manage the market for 2 or 3 or even 13 years. Eventually, you're going to want to step down. And then the whole bank account issue becomes an issue. And, over our many years of the association, we have seen markets come and go. And in some cases, that's a really great thing, because markets say, hey, it turns out this wasn't such a great place to have a market, or it turns out that our community isn't ready, or whatever. But some of those coming and going are further complicated if you have gotten yourself into some sort of official capacity, where then you have to dissolve and so on and so forth. But it's another area that we can offer some expertise and some coaching, and we're always happy and ready to do that. And the last thing that I'll say, because we're pretty much running out of town, I'm happy to answer more questions if they come up. But we have we all have email addresses, which I think you've become aware of on our website. We also have a phone, actually a landline for people who like to talk on the phone rather than type, which I tend to fall into that category. And you can call and leave us messages, and we will get back to you. And if you call and leave us a message and you have not heard back from us within 3 days, please call again. Somehow your message got lost. We are a service organization. We do intend to answer every phone call we ever got. And if it doesn't happen within 3 days, it may be just because it got lost. Do not feel like you're bugging us. As I've said, without you, we don't have the organization that we have. So keep calling, keep coming to us with questions, because that makes all of us smarter and more equipped to deal with the next question. Anything else? Okay, well, I'm really rah market managers. We can't live without you guys, and we really appreciate the very hard work you're doing. The one other thing that we are always open to at the NMFMA is you can call and complain. You can call and say, I want to shoot some of my vendors, or can you believe that I have a customer who came and said this, or whatever it is. Sometimes that kind of stuff can really wear you down. As a rule, as market managers, you're not that kind of person that stuff really wears you down, but sometimes it can. And if it does, please call and complain, and we will listen and make their noises and encourage you in whatever way we need to in order to keep you guys out doing your job. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, ditto to what Sarah just said. Big time. You're amazing.
Yeah.
And we're here for you.
Yep. So we have a couple of sessions coming up this afternoon. One of them, which is going to start in just about 15 minutes, is an opportunity for anybody who's part of a rural farmers market to talk and problem solve and troubleshoot and appreciate their rural farmers market. And then at 2, we will have a similar session for urban farmers markets. It's a great opportunity for people who love their farmers market to talk about markets with other people who love their farmers markets. So please attend. And if you can't figure out if you're rural or urban, just go to both sessions. You're bound to hear some information that will be useful to whatever's going on with your market. Hopefully there'll be good ideas about ways of promoting your market. There'll be good ideas about ways to improve your market. And all in all, it should be a lot of fun. And any of you who want to show up a happy hour at 5, we'll be happy to see you and kiss you all goodbye to next year. I think that's it. I'm going to be signing off here. So thank everybody for being here.